Welcome to the Bounty Zero X podcast. I'm your host, Angelo Adam, founder and CEO of Bounty Zero X. Bounty Zero X is a decentralized bounty hunting network powered by the BNTY token. Today is November 29th, 2018, and my guest on the show is Bill Ottman. Bill is the CEO of Minds.com. In 2011, Ottman co-founded Minds, an open source social network platform that launched to the public in 2015. Minds has over 1 million registered users and over 100,000 monthly active users. And unlike Facebook, Minds is built on radical transparency, believes in transparency, fairness, and internet freedom, where users can earn cryptocurrency for contributions to the community. And the Minds code is 100% free and open source. So, Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Minds. Where did the idea come from and how does the platform work?
Sure. So the idea came from basically understanding that there's an inevitability that a free, open source, private, more decentralized alternative social network is going to emerge. It's just like a natural gravitation of the internet. You know, we saw it happen with Wikipedia. You know, we're seeing it happen with Bitcoin and crypto in general. People want more transparency. They want more control. So if you have two social networks, one proprietary, secretive, manipulating you and your data, and another that is doing the opposite of those things and actually rewarding you and protecting your privacy and giving you access to the information of what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, you know, as long as those are functionally competitive with each other, most people are going to pick the open and transparent one. So we just have been building it for a bunch of years now, and we keep gaining momentum as each of these scandals comes out. You know, everyone's fed up, but they're also stuck because these apps are so entrenched in our lives and our computers and our phones. So it's hard to extract it. And it's going to be a long, gradual process as, you know, alternatives rise up and become functionally competitive. But that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone can relate to that. You know, we especially now in the news lately, it's especially prescient with the topics of freedom of speech and censorship and privacy, that all of the current social media platforms are facing criticism over the data they share that belongs to the users and the censorship of the content created by the users of the platforms. And so Minds is offering an alternative solution that users can sign up for and use instead of what is currently the market leader or the market, the products in the market that are available. So I think you would agree the network effects are the main drivers that lead to these larger, you know, monopolies or large companies in the space like Facebook or Twitter, because the more users on the networks, the more valuable it becomes. So even if there are alternatives that are equally good, one of the arguments people make is, well, no one's on them, or, you know, it doesn't make sense to join them because there's nothing happening on them. So how do you guys combat that? And so you mentioned it's a gradual process over time, and as more and more people get frustrated with the current status quo, they switch over, and eventually, in theory, the argument goes that, well, enough people will switch that it will reach a tipping point, and, you know, the platforms which align with people's values will overtake and replace those which don't. Is that how you would say the argument goes, or are there any points?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I mean, you know, we have, even though, you know, we're 1.5 million users, but the odd reality is that users, especially in the small to medium-sized content creator world, are getting better reach on Minds than they are getting on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And this is because we have a tool called Boost, right? So you earn the tokens every day based on the engagement and contributions. And you can then, one token will give you 1,000 impressions on whatever content you boost. And so this is a release valve out of the void. And, you know, the algorithms on Facebook and other networks are so bad now that you can hardly even reach your own followers because their newsfeed is such a just mess of variables and we don't know even why you're seeing what you're seeing. And so yes, we need to achieve critical mass. We need to keep getting major influencers to drop links and sign up, and we need viral events to occur. And we've had a few of these happen where, multiple times we've received like hundreds of thousands of users in just like days. And this is how this is going to keep happening, and we need to keep figuring out how to hit those nerves. And, in conjunction with just regular solid growth as all the disillusioned people are moving over. And so, it's difficult to predict. There's a lot of hard, gradual work involved, and there's also trying to put your thumb on the pulse or not your thumb, your finger, and figure out how to enter into major global consciousness. So, and that's much more complicated. That's like mimetic strategy, which is a very interesting area to be working on.
Yeah, I mean, Minds has a number of features which you mentioned, like the boost feature, which lets you exchange tokens to promote your content, wiring, peer-to-peer payments, sending tokens, upvoting, earning for the content and contributions you make to the network. So there are a lot of economic incentives for users on other platforms to join Minds or other freedom platforms which support their non-censorship and censorship resistance and other features. So, also there's just market power that influencers and creators have when they, group together. So what are your thoughts on like a union or some type of mass exodus of content creators to all have a pledge where they say we're all going to leave X platform on X date unless they make the following changes?
That's a great idea. Having a content creator union would definitely be a valuable movement. We have seen like hashtag delete Facebook, which we saw a huge surge when that was happening. But yeah, listing demands is a very powerful possibility. I think. Do you know anyone who's done that? Is that being worked on?
I have. I've heard people mention it, but I haven't heard any like hard. Yeah, I haven't seen anything done in that respect. But I've heard people discuss it as a one of many potential routes people could take to.
Well, the issue is that the large creators are very dependent on these big platforms. Their revenue is dependent on whether it's YouTube or whatever major outlet they have with millions of followers or whatnot. So getting people to commit to leave if certain things aren't done is it's a big ask. And, when livelihoods are on the line, it gets very complicated. So I definitely support a gradual supplementation. The first step is to get the biggest creators in the world at least having a presence on the alternative and building up their backup so that they're even putting themselves in a position to make that threat. So, and it's hard to go cold turkey. I'm off those platforms now. It took me a while though. And it's not an easy move to make. So if we can get a handful to do that, then that would be extremely powerful. And I think that all methods are positive. I think that if we can do a union, you also have creators who are just supplementing, all of the above. And over time, look, people are sick of Facebook. They don't like it. No one likes what is happening with, carrying around these surveillance bots in our pockets and, just sort of being slave to it. And just, it feels dirty, but it's just where we're at technologically as society. So it's just one step at a time. You also can't feel too guilty about it.
So do you think that the Facebooks and Twitters of the world will change and make concessions? And I think maybe some users are saying, oh, well, they'll get the hint, and if we don't change, we'll lose all users, so the market will force them to change. Or do you think they're just so far down the road that it would take too much of it's almost like they have too much infrastructure in place the way things are, that it's too difficult for them to make changes at this point, or somewhere in between?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that I'm not seeing, even based on the last couple of years of scandals, if you look at the actual infrastructural changes that they've made, whether it's, the ad transparency with Facebook, quasi transparency, or the demonetization that was happening over at YouTube, it hasn't really improved in any sort of meaningful way. I think that they put a big fancy colorful polish on top of something that's not infrastructurally meaningful. Like, they're not open sourcing their software. Until they do that, they literally have to do that for it to be meaningful and for it to be a real alternative. I don't think that it's a sustainable long-term platform unless it is open source and moving towards decentralization and giving users as much control and being opted out of surveillance by default. These kinds of things are the real changes. And so they're going to try to say that, we're giving you these new tools, but unless it's those things that I outlined, I really don't consider it meaningful transformation.
So mine's one of the guiding principles is the Manila Principle on Intermediary Liability, which has a number of guiding points, including that intermediaries should be shielded from liability from third-party content. So you guys have adopted this Bill of Rights. Where did that idea come from? And tell me a little bit about that process of.
Sure. So it's complicated. So the Manila Principles are sort of like the ideal. They essentially, say that you don't have to take down content without a court order. Now, I think that's like an ideal, which is sort of our goal, and we're like aiming towards that. Our policy is that as long as it's lawful in the US, it can be on the site, and that obviously opens us up to a whole world of content that's not allowed on Facebook and Google. So, but this is just necessary because if you have terms that are not just what's legal in the US, then you have an inconsistent policy enforcement situation, which is what's happening on all of the major platforms where, X offensive post gets taken down, Y offensive post doesn't, and you don't know really the rationale for what's going on. And it's just totally subjective and just unclear. I mean, we even have difficulty doing this with a much more open content policy because there's still edge cases with what's legal. So, we're not necessarily, like, for instance, someone's spamming the network or like making violent threats or whatnot. Like, we are taking that content down because, waiting for a court order to take down like a clear violent threat. That's like, I think that it sort of is the direction that I think we're trying to go, but we're also trying to protect the network at the same time. Like, you can't just spam isn't necessarily like illegal, but you can get attacked. Like, the network gets attacked by spam. So for us to wait for court, there's certain things that are just not practical with regards to the Manila Principles, but the Manila Principles are an essential document. So do you kind of understand the gray area and the nuance involved with that, with like our terms and the Manila Principles side by side?
Yeah, it is a tough, line, and it's a gray area with no black and white. And with Facebook, they have like teams of thousands of people whose sole job is to moderate content on these platforms. And to the extent that, Facebook is making business decisions in some instances to block certain content, and in some cases, it's just not out of any bad intentions or bad motivations. It's just like difficult. And, even if, let's say, they wanted to support freedom of speech and be censorship resistant, handling the nuances of all the different jurisdictions and the edge cases is just a difficult problem to solve from a technical perspective. And so my understanding is they're, investing a lot in like the machine learning algorithms. But yeah, it's just a difficult challenge for any company to face, even if you're a company with, censorship resistance as one of your leading principles.
Yeah, I think that they are doing things with machine learning jurisdiction. It is complex, and like I'm not blaming them for everything. I understand people will scream censorship in a lot of cases where it's just not rational, but I think that their policy is just completely flawed and rotten. They could be saving themselves so much overhead if they would just open up the content policy and understand that, look, people on the internet are going to do what people on the internet do, as long as you're giving good filtering tools, not putting that kind of stuff in front of people's faces. I mean, even Twitter and Tumblr have slightly more open policies with regards to things like nudity and art and stuff like that. So I think that it's just very problematic for the biggest communications platforms in the world to have these extremely restrictive policies. And I'm not saying Twitter and Tumblr have it right. They don't. They're slightly better than Facebook, but not much.
Yeah. I was listening to this podcast about Facebook's content moderation policies and how they have like these specific rules set up for every potential edge case, and they're constantly changing and adopting these rules. And obviously that it's like a huge burden and economic incentive and investment to spend all the time, but so much content is being updated to websites like Facebook on a daily basis that you have to have thousands of people constantly moderating. And then what are the rules and what are the different jurisdictions and how they change based off of each country's rules. And then you have the other components of like certain countries, like in the European Union, where they're coming to these websites and saying, well, you need to follow our content policies. And
right.
So then websites just make those content policies global, even instead of segregating them by different jurisdictions. So, it's really complicated.
Yeah. And we've sort of taken the approach that we're just going to be following the US. And, when we run into issues with other countries, we're going to run into issues with other countries. And, then you have the possible solution of just decentralizing everything, making everything more peer-to-peer so that, there's not even a server where a piece of content lives that a country or whoever could come and, request for it to be taken down. So that's more of an uncensorable infrastructure, which we are working on the side for a project called Nomad. It's public on our GitHub now, github.com/mine/nomad. And that uses Ethereum addresses for the usernames and the DAT protocol, which is a really awesome project, peer-to-peer, torrent-based, and you access it through what's called a Beaker browser. And it's like dat : / and just these types of routes around the problem are really interesting. So, but then within whether it's crypto and, immutable blockchains or torrent-based systems, you have the problem of once it's up there, and you're, getting it down is a problem. So then you have the nuance between the control over your content to be able to delete it versus the control over it not being censored. And there's a paradox involved there. So what we're I think parallel infrastructures are important so that the user then has the ability to say, okay, I want this on a server that I could potentially delete from, or a user being able to say, okay, I want this to kind of go into the ether. But then, you have risks on both sides because with blockchains and torrent-based systems, bad stuff can get unleashed into the wild, but it's also a huge protector of free speech. So we don't have a perfect system.
Yeah, I agree. So let's change topics and jump on over to the kind of like the economic incentives and that are at play on the Minds platform. So you have the cryptocurrency, which is a Ethereum-based token, an ERC20 token, which is used to reward users for creating content. So what has your experience been so far on how that's been playing out, and what type of user feedback have you been getting from users of the platform who say, we really love this feature, but why can't I do this? And I think this works well, but this doesn't work so well.
It's been overwhelmingly positive. So we had a point system before we moved to ERC20 tokens when we first launched the mobile app in 2015. And so you would earn the points and then you could use them for similar utilities that you can now. But, moving to the blockchain and creating like a transparent limited token supply with just much better token economics and distribution and less fraud. I mean, there's been all of these improvements by moving to the blockchain, and it's the best. I mean, we love it. Our community loves this reward system. Every day you earn tokens based on the engagement you receive and your referrals and a number of other variables. And so we just have this gamification embedded into the network, which I just think we're going to see more and more apps emerging with this. People are going to start expecting it, because why wouldn't the network and the platform you're using be rewarding you for your time. You're valuable. Your energy online means something, and the big networks don't really seem to understand that their users' time and energy matters. I mean, on Facebook, I have some friends who ran these huge Facebook pages one called the Free Thought Project and another called Anti Media. They're sort of alternative media, but good journalism and really, really thought provoking content. They both these pages have like 5 million followers. They both just got banned, and hundreds of Facebook pages just got banned out of nowhere. I mean, these people dedicated. These were not scammers. These were not like the content was not even particularly controversial. These are people who spent like a decade building these followings on Facebook, and then it's just gone. So Facebook clearly doesn't have any sort of respect or gratitude for even their power users. So, and there's no transparency or communication with those people. It's just a big mess. So I think that more networks should adopt reward systems. We're actually trying to team up with other networks and platforms and websites to, so they can reward our tokens and, then actually use them to get more eyeballs on their content.
Yeah, that'd be great. We could maybe talk about how we could use our Bounty 0x token in our platform and vice versa. Maybe we could see if there's any routes where it would make sense to do something like that.
Absolutely.
So you have all these other platforms that are experimenting with the gamification and tokens. And do you think you have found the right formula? Do you think there's going to be tweaks to it? And what do you think?
Oh, yeah, no, there's going to be a lot of tweaks. I think that tokenomics is such a fascinating field, and tweaking rewards, tweaking incentives. I think that this is going to be an ongoing process. We haven't been able to put nearly enough energy into it. I think that we really need multiple full-time people, really just dedicated to it, figuring out analytics around, what people are finding the most valuable. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is very complicated to find that right formula, and it's going to be Veracity, like a video hosting platform, blockchain based with a token model, hired a economics. We had them on the podcast a couple months ago. They hired this a token economics advising firm with and produced like a 40-page paper with formulas and for how the token model works. And so, and Steam is another platform out there that is working on their token model and figuring out how to make it work. And, as of the time of this, they recently had their posts how they're, cutting down on the size of the development team due to the declining price of the market and, figuring out how to make the system work. So it seems like they're working on something to make the numbers work. And I think it's a challenge to get all the different levers working in the right way and all the economic incentives aligned for all the parties, because you have the content creators, you have the consumers of the content, and you have to reduce all of the gaming as in like taking advantage or fraudulent actors.
Absolutely. We found that so with the old point system, we used to reward people for generating content. So like just when you would post a blog or a newsfeed post or whatnot, you would earn some points. But we quickly, we found that was the most gamed by far. So we've moved towards a much more engagement based. So like based on engagement that you receive, as opposed to something that someone can just quickly build a bot to, do a post every number of minutes and whatnot. And rate limits are an important advancement that we made this year to get rid of. I mean, you're never going to get rid of bots. It's more controlling the bots and coexisting with the bots so that, and certain bots are actually not bad. So it's just certain automated behavior can benefit a network, but you just need to make sure that bots aren't able to exploit anything to a degree that is really damaging to the economy. So I think that, looking at every function, making sure that it's not too gameable, and understanding also rewards that a regular person can reasonably achieve. You don't want it so that only big influencers can earn. You don't want it so the issue with Steam, though I generally respect what they're doing, is that the more Steam you hold, the more voting power you have. On Minds, everyone's vote is worth the same. So how much you earn every day is based on the total unique engagement you're receiving, as opposed to, if you got the attention of a couple whales.
And so have you found that that is a better system to have the total engagement over any 24-hour period and then dividing that up?
Yes.
And the pool of rewards, and the pool of rewards is generated out of the, how does that total pool of rewards over each given period generated?
That's tied to the growth of the network, actually. So every day we're generating tokens based on active users. Though that is actually the area that we're focusing on right now, deciding if the amplifier or if that amount of tokens that we're releasing every day is the right amount, if that needs to be more or less. And, those formulas are really key. And I think that, they're open for anyone to use or share and help. And that, that's the power of open source too. And I think there's a lot of other projects that, we're all learning from each other. And so, I would love to get more into tokenomics. I think as soon as we stabilize other components of the site and just that is where I want to be spending most of the time, because I think for creating viral effects, network effects, really getting that right is one of the most powerful ways to probably achieve the critical mass.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a critical component of making the incentives aligned. So let's jump to a different topic. You mentioned that you guys are, working on stabilizing the site and the token economics. So what is your day-to-day like as the co-founder or CEO of the company? What are your responsibilities, and where do you spend your time on any given day?
Pretty diverse. I mean, anything from the operating plan, financials, looking at our projections. We have a very unique operating plan, because we sell, so people can either earn the tokens or buy them. And when we sell the tokens, that's coming in as deferred revenue. And then, so it's sort of like a gift card or like a video game token. Then when the tokens are used as advertising or whatnot, that's when we actually register the revenue. And so, the financial end of things is also interesting. So spending a lot of time on that and just, staying lean, making sure that our headcount plan is on point. I'm working a lot on hiring right now. Team building is probably the number one thing that differentiates successful from unsuccessful companies. So we're, in a lucky position to be able to do some hiring, definitely focusing on developers. And let's see what else. Also, influencers, always thinking about network effects, always, thinking about rewards. I'm definitely putting energy into that. I also try to be active on Minds. I want to be using our product as much as possible, because for as much of my day-to-day as possible, using our groups for our internal conversations, I feel like if I'm not using our tools, then why would someone else? So, and this is how I feel with extracting Google from my life and other proprietary networks. It's like, if I can migrate my activity to Minds for all different purposes of my day-to-day communications, then my use case and everyone on our team's use case that's what's also going to achieve the network effect. Making sure that we're walking the walk. And why would it get mass adoption if it cannot even get internal adoption? And so I do find myself using it a lot more. I mean, I get better engagement on Minds than I do on other social networks. So that's a plus. I think that, we're going to be focusing on Messenger a lot more, because Messenger is just entwined in everything. And we're moving towards an end-to-end encrypted system. So that's a big project that we're taking on. We're also playing with video conferencing right now, integrating that into our groups using a cool platform called Jitsi, which is open source
Yeah,
and
heard of them.
encrypted. And yeah, they're really great. And yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but but also focused if that is possible.
So you guys are working on a lot of different features, and you have a lot of upcoming releases. So how many folks do you have working on the development team and with the company as a whole now?
There's only like 10 of us. Pretty much split between like ops stuff and developers, but I mean, like I mentioned, hiring is my main focus right now. So it's just incredible how important having a really honed, tight development team is. I mean, it's literally the difference of half a year of productivity.
Yeah.
You know, having developers who are just delivering clean code that doesn't require constant back and forth with code reviews is, it's really irreplaceable. It's hard to find. It's very, very competitive market. But, what we're finding is that developers want to work with us. And I think that's largely because we're open source. I encourage all companies to go free and open source because it's so much more valuable for developers. Their work actually gets to get seen. It's not just buried in some repo that, never sees the light of day. It actually gives them more pride in what they're doing, and they feel like they're contributing to something that is, much more community oriented. And let's see. Yeah, we're also releasing our API later this year, which is going to be big for developers. We've been working a lot on our installation tools with like Docker and Kubernetes and drone and continuous integration. So, giving developers a tool that they can use for themselves in their own application development. We want to gravitate developers to us to, participate in the open source or even potentially get hired. I think that, the model's already been set. There's so many immensely successful open source projects that, have thousands of community developers and, they get irreplaceable contributions from them. And so it's like a give and take because anyone can actually take our code and start their own social network. And we want people to do that. And we want people to contribute and leverage Nomad as much as they can. So I don't see how any enterprise product, I think the gravity is just moving towards free and open source software. I am going to be shocked if in like 20 years we see much proprietary software at all.
Yeah, we talked about making our code base open source and something that we're probably going to do in the future.
There's a lot of fear around it because people think, oh, someone's going to run away with my idea and, compete with us. But to be honest, it's just really unnecessary fear, especially you can use cool license. Like we use the AGPL v3, which is the, newest GPL. And essentially anyone can take your code, do whatever they want with it, sell it, modify it. But if they make changes, they have to share their changes with you and with everyone else. And this sort of keeps the playing field balanced and allows you to help each other as opposed to compete. And, competition within your code base is good. You want more people in your code. So I have literally not even seen any negative effects from it. It's only brought us positive.
Yeah. So before we finish up, I want to be respectful of your time and we'll just ask a couple more questions. So where are you guys based? Where is headquarters?
We are actually fully remote right now. We just switched. We had an office in Connecticut and then also one in Brooklyn last year. We still have one in Connecticut. I live in Connecticut. But yeah, we're fully remote for the time being. We're probably going to be looking at bringing the team together next year somewhere. But, remote is also very valuable. It's very appealing to hires as well.
Yeah. We're also currently remote, all spread out everywhere. So, and you guys have held your seed round where you raised 350,000 back in 2011. Have you guys had Series A rounds or subsequent funding rounds since then?
Yeah, just I realized I have 1% left, so I might cut off. Yeah, we just did a $6 million raise from Medici Ventures, which is a blockchain-focused firm, and we did a equity crowdfunding round through WeFunder last year, which was epic, and we did like $1 million in like 2 weeks. So it's just the Series A has been huge. It gives us a whole new wave to ride, and we're really going to work as hard as possible to make this happen. I think the world wants it. We just we have to bring all the right people together, and it's not just going to be us. I think we can federate and work with other social networks as well. I think that it's not like a one ring to rule them all scenario.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the Series A, and we are happy to help you guys out in any way we can at Bounty Zero X, and support what you're doing and the work that you're doing. I think it's very valuable, and we're look forward to seeing the platform develop, and we'd love to have you back on the podcast in the future for another episode when you guys have more updates and new releases.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's going to cut off, but thanks so much. Let's make sure to get you guys on, and we'll get you playing with some tokens, and I'd love to collaborate. So let's keep the conversation going.
All right, great. My guest on the show today has been Bill Ottman. Bill is CEO of Minds.com. Bill, it's great having you. We'll speak again soon.
Awesome. Cheers.
Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bounty Zero X podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast below. Check out bountyzerox.io, the #1 bounty hunting platform where you can complete work and earn cryptocurrency. Please consult your professional financial investment and tax advisors before making any investment in initial coin offerings. Bounty Zero X does not provide investment or financial advice and does not endorse or recommend investment in any ICOs advertised on the Bounty Zero X podcast or website.